The first nationally televised presidential debate happened in 1960 and was viewed by more than 65 million people. 60 years later, that trend continues. Presidential debates are among the most watched telecasts of the year. But while millions watch, how likely is the event to affect the final outcome of the election? Dr. John Koch is Senior Lecturer and Director of Debate at Vanderbilt University. He's an expert in debate, and his research is guided by the question of how we can improve citizenship practices and debates within our political culture. Dr. Koch, thank you so much for taking some time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Presidential debates tend to happen rather late in the game when many voters have made up their minds. Historically, what's been their purpose? To sway voters, to assist the undecided?
I think it depends on what perspective you're coming from. I think candidates hope that they can sway voters or change the course of an election. Those of us who research it, the results mainly show that they are influential in increasing information amongst voters, so they become more familiar about issues and they can connect, which candidate agrees with them on the issues. Changing minds, they're very unlikely to do that. They might help undecided voters. So the short answer to the question is, at the margins, these debates might impact who wins or loses, but they're really more about information sharing within our political culture.
So if we look to history and the influence of debates, will the most recent debate have an impact on the results of this 2020 election?
Well, if we look at the polling, right, and we trust polls, the polls seem to indicate that after this last debate, Joe Biden's numbers, the national numbers have went up by 1 to 2 points, and they seem to indicate that undecided voters or voters who were maybe leaning towards Biden but weren't fully committed after that first debate have become more solidly committed. But this is all margin of error stuff, right? It could be, it could not be. So it's very hard to ever prove whether or not a debate had that much impact on the outcome of the election.
Well, it certainly had less than stellar reviews. How much responsibility falls on the moderator in a case like this? Or when a debate spirals out of control, is it the debate format at fault?
I think that we can probably, to some extent, talk about format and talk about the moderator. In regards to format, I think the time that candidates have is too short. So if we go back to the first Kennedy-Nixon debate in 1960, Kennedy and Nixon each had 8 minutes for opening statements. When they were asked a question, they had 3 minutes to respond to that question, and then they were offered a couple minutes of rebuttal, and then they moved on. The current format's a minute, 90 seconds. It's just not enough time to get a full thought out. So what ends up happening is that the candidates run out of time. They want to finish their thought, and it looks like everybody's talking over each other, where perhaps if we had longer times like Kennedy-Nixon in 1960, that could alleviate some of that. In terms of the moderator, one of the complaints I have with moderators is that they don't let debate happen. So we've seen the Commission on Presidential Debates. Today they came out and said, I think there's going to be 6 topics that need to be covered. Next Thursday, the first debate between President Trump and Vice President Biden had 9 areas. So a lot of times when this debate starts to happen, the moderator is more interested in getting through all 9 of their topic areas instead of letting it play out or an engagement, which also makes it look like they're talking over each other and interrupting as well. One way to solve that would be just kind of less issues and more time to talk about these things. Say, we're going to have a debate on healthcare. Each candidate has this amount of time to talk about. We might get a more substantive discussion.
Well, and you also suggest that oftentimes moderators should do a better job of follow-up.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times moderators don't ask the logical follow-up questions. And I think that's a product too of, wanting to get through all the topics they want to get through. And so instead of asking logical follow-up questions, they move on to their next point to make sure they get through their 9 issues or their 6 issues. I think there needs to be more of a focus on good debate that allows voters to see the candidates actually debate out these issues and what their positions are and defend them, as opposed to rushing through these issues. I guess, quantity over quality when it comes to issues discussion in a debate.
Well, the town halls certainly had much lower viewership. Are dueling town halls any substitute for a debate?
I think that's a good question. I've written in the past that debates are joint press conferences. So you can think of them. We could also probably say they're joint town halls. Moderator asks them a question. They give kind of the answer you would get anytime on the campaign trail. Maybe there's some engagement, maybe there's not, but it really doesn't operate much differently than a press conference or a town hall. So I don't know if there's much substantive difference between the town hall and the debate format. And since both of them had an opportunity to talk last night and give fuller answers and not interrupt or talk over each other, voters might have been able to walk away with more information last night than they were in that first debate, which is why, I've called multiple times for, changing the format of presidential debates, because presidential debates should give voters more information than a town hall, but I'm not sure the current situation allows for that.
Well, because they happened simultaneously, viewers either had to switch back and forth or watched one or the other. Was that a mistake to stage them that way?
I don't know if it's my place to comment on that. Certainly I think it serves our democracy better if everybody has an opportunity to see both candidates, and anything that, conflicts with that is certainly questionable. I think for our democracy, voters have information to be able to make a decision. Being able to see both candidates is important. I personally had to, watch one and DVR another, and I'm sure that's what a lot of people did last night.
So why do you think some argued that there should actually be no debates for 2020?
Yeah, so I think there were three reasons people were arguing for no presidential debates. The first one's the one we've already talked about, which is this debate whether or not they have any real value to voters. The real value most people argue for, right, is that they bring information. It's a chance to see both the candidates. But some people argue, right, there's plenty of other ways in the year 2020 for people to get information about candidates. It's not 1960 anymore. You don't have to see them. Like, television's not the only way to see them. You can go on their websites, you can go on YouTube channels, you can go on social media, right? There's a lot of ways to get information about the candidates. So just an argument that debates aren't unique in providing information to viewers. My pushback on that would be, as you started at the top, 65 million people watched the debate, or I think 65 million watched it in 1960, 73 million watched the first debate between Vice President Biden and President Trump. So even if there's other places to get information, this has become an important civic ritual where people are going to tune in. It's the Super Bowl of politics, where whether you follow politics closely or not, you're going to tune in. So while there are other places, we've been kind of culturally trained that this is the place that we go for that information. I think the second reason is that they don't change minds, which we've talked about. If they're not going to change minds, why do we do them? So that's people who, if they're not persuasive events that are going to change voters' minds, then they're not useful. Then I think the third one is this concern about increase in falsehoods, that candidates in real time are putting forward all this evidence, right, that ends up being false. We have to have fact checkers. There's no way and it puts too much on the moderator and on the other candidates to have to fact check in real time. And it does more of a disservice than it does a service in terms of information.
Well, as you say, whether debates are a deciding factor or not, millions continue to watch as the campaigning hits the home stretch. Dr. Koch, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with NewsPoint today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.